Now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning. Welcome to the Department of Family and Support Services Neighborhood Cleanup Transitional Jobs Program RFP webinar. My name is Mark Sanders. I am the Director of Workforce and Human Services for DFSS. I am joined by my colleagues Julia and Thomas, and we will be guiding you through today's presentation. Due to the volume of participants, we've placed everyone on mute. You can submit your questions via the question box, and we will respond to those questions after going through the slides. Please use the question box to notify us of any technical issues. Agenda for today is we'll begin with welcome and introductions. And after this slide, I'll allow Julia and Thomas to introduce themselves. We'll go through the DFSS overview and strategic plan. We will go over the purpose of this RFP, the background, information about the scope and the program, selection criteria, the timeline, technical assistance for applicants and e-procurement, and we will respond to as many questions as we can in the time we have together. So I'll pass it over to Julia to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Julia Talbot. I'm from the Department of Family and Support Services, and I'm the person who manages the RFP process. I'll be presenting a little bit at the end of today's webinar just to talk through the e-procurement system, which is what we use to build applications off of our we build the applications for you to apply to. And I'm available always for administrative types of questions. Programmatic stuff goes to Mark. And joining us also is Thomas Mose. Tom, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Tom Mose. I'm with the Department of Family and Support Services. I provide technical assistance for all of the RFP webinars, and we're the ones that help get the registration reports and the attendees that come in, and we any questions that you type up are recorded and provided back to the workforce team and Julia to help answer in your questions after the webinar. And after the webinar concludes, we post the recording in the DFSS YouTube channel. So I'll be in the background for all of today's meeting. Thank you for joining us.
All right, thank you, Julia and Tom. So the Chicago Department of Family Support Services has 7 primary program divisions: Children's Services, the Division on Domestic Violence, Homeless Services, Youth Services, Senior Services, Human Services, and Workforce Services, which leads this webinar today. Our mission is working with community partners. We connect Chicago residents and families to resources that build stability, support their well-being, and empower them to thrive. Our priorities are to deliver and support high-quality, innovative, and comprehensive services that empower clients to thrive. We collaborate with community partners like you, sister agencies, and public officials on programs and policies that improve Chicagoans' lives and advance systemic change. We inform the public of resources available to them through DFSS and its community partners. Finally, we steward DFSS's resources responsibly and effectively. The department's goal is to achieve better results for vulnerable Chicagoans via its strategic framework, which we incorporates process improvements scaffolded over time. In phase 1, we laid out the strategic framework, setting and operationalizing department priorities, outcome goals, and metrics, and aligning with decision-making procedures. In phase 2, we focused on strategic contracting, engaging grantees to integrate outcome goals and metrics into results-driven requests for proposals and contracts. In phase 3, we focused on performance improvement, implementing a performance improvement system to prioritize and execute efforts and improve results. Finally, we're in phase 4, and this is still in development, and this is called system coordination. This is where we focus on improving service matching and referral and linking data to improve client experience and outcomes. At DFSS, our RFPs are viewed as critical strategic tools. We use RFPs and contracts to ensure outcomes continue to be at the center of our work. We develop shared understanding of our priorities for how we track improvement, and we support two-way communication between DFSS and delegates about best practices, high-quality services, and the needs of those we serve. We've adjusted the structure and the content of our RFPs application questions to shift the focus from activities to goals, to align DFSS's priorities with selection criteria and application questions, as well as to pose questions that provide the most relevant information for decision making. So RFPs articulate what we want to achieve together for Chicagoans rather than focusing on activities alone. At the core of this work are the outcome goals. What are we trying to achieve with this RFP? Who are we trying to achieve it for? We bundle that with program information, or we surround that with program information, which focuses on where we are today, the priorities for the future, and we want to focus on the most important programmatic activities that our agency should undertake. Finally, this informs the framework for improvement, and that includes our performance measures, how we measure success and progress against those outcome goals and work together to improve. Our selection criteria reflects our focus on results and best practices. So we use this RFP to review, and we base our decisions based on the strength of the proposed program, the performance management and the outcomes, the organizational capacity, whether or not the applicant has the appropriate staff, systems, processes, and other organizational resources to execute the work, and it reflects the diversity of the communities it serves. We also want to make sure the costs are reasonable, the budget has accurate justifications, and respondents are leveraging funds. Key changes to this year's RFPs, based on application and evaluator survey feedback, we focused on more clearly describing program expectations and priorities for improvement. Additionally, given the events over the past year, over the last 18 months now, we have reviewed all of our RFPs to integrate a greater focus on equity and lessons learned about service delivery during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now we'll have a brief overview of the program model. The Neighborhood Cleanup Transitional Jobs Program model prepares returning residents, individuals who have served prison terms, are transitioning from incarceration, or have an arrest or conviction record for full-time employment at or above the city's minimum wage. Central to this program are career navigation, support services, and temporary subsidized jobs that stabilize participants with a source of income and are integrated with those career navigation services that help participants access training, additional training, and develop skills that are aligned with their long-term career interests. The purpose of our RFP and the goal of the Transitional Jobs Program is to support and connect returning residents to career navigation, supportive services, as well as temporary subsidized jobs that will stabilize them with a source of income, help them identify and overcome their barriers to employment, and prepare them for full-time permanent job opportunities with wages at or above Chicago's minimum wage. This is a key priority for us. We understand that living wage is even above the $15 per hour rate that is our minimum wage. And so we want to make sure that all of our residents are at this baseline so that they can stabilize themselves and ultimately achieve their long-term economic goals. For this RFP, we've partnered with the Departments of Streets and Sanitation to identify delegate agency partner to manage our job training program for returning residents. The Department of Streets and Sanitation offers temporary work assignments and valuable job skills to returning residents residing in the city of Chicago with nonviolent criminal offenses. We seek to partner with community-based organizations that have experience creating pathways to meaningful careers for returning residents, experience serving residents successfully with strong performance outcomes, and currently funded workforce programming options for vulnerable residents in the city of Chicago. Last year, we had 59 individuals enroll into the program, and they worked approximately 20 hours per week at a pay rate of $10.50 an hour. Of those who were placed in jobs after the program, about 10% received incomes at or above the city's minimum wage. We want to improve this year with this RFP, and we want to enroll at least 80 participants in the program. We want to make sure those wages are at $15 per hour. And we want to focus on 35% of participants after they complete the program, or at some point in the process, they transition from the program into full-time, unsubsidized employment with wages at or above the city's minimum wage. The target population for this program continues to be returning residents with nonviolent criminal offenses, who may be unemployed, underemployed, and may have limited work skills. All eligible individuals must be 18 years of age or older, City of Chicago residents, and authorized to work in the United States. This program is also open to veterans and individuals with disabilities who meet the eligibility criteria. The Neighborhood Cleanup Program model combines elements of a transitional job with intensive support and job readiness training services delivered within the context of a grounds maintenance program. So grounds maintenance is a seasonal job opportunity, and work crews are deployed from about March 1st all the way through November 30th. This is approximately 35 weeks. Vacant lots and work assignments are given by the Department of Streets and Sanitation. Their Bureau of Street Operations manages that. While they provide the work assignments, the respondents will be required to provide the tools and transportation for work crews to each site. Respondents must demonstrate the capacity to recruit and enroll the required number of participants needed for both the morning and afternoon shifts. These are 4 work crews of 10 participants per shift. Participants may be assigned to work no more than 35 hours per week. We want to minimize the need for overtime, which is why we want to focus on making sure that we have enough participants within each of the work crews so that the work can get done within those hours. Respondents will manage the participant payroll for this program, and participant hourly wages must align with the City of Chicago's minimum wage ordinance. Program requirements, additional requirements. The equipment requirements include gas-powered weed whackers, brooms, rakes, shovels, bags, mowers, hand saws, pruners, de-weeding devices, picks, any type of tool that you would use outside to manage grounds. Participants must also have a knowledge of worker safety skills that are compliant with current OSHA standards. Crew personnel shall be directly supervised by the respondent, and respondents are also responsible for training, which ensures OSHA compliance from all participants. On the career navigation and the program side, we focus on, I'm sorry, I'm moving faster than the slide, sorry. For career navigation services, these are embedded into the program, and this includes just ensuring that you have the right participants in the program through outreach and recruitment, making sure your orientations are comprehensive so that participants know the details of what's expected of them, of the work, of the hours, whether it's the morning shift, afternoon, or both, but within those 35 hours per week, and making sure that they have enough participants in the program. Next slide. We also want to make sure that with the delegate agencies, the respondents are focused on permanent employment opportunities. Once the program is over after the 35 weeks, we want to make sure that participants have an opportunity to be hired to unsubsidized employment opportunities and will collaborate with other industry-specific occupations or that are in alignment with the skills that they learn or in a new field that they are interested in. We want to focus on follow-up and retention services after they complete the program. And those retention services are important while they're in the program. Again, attendance to the daily work sites and making sure there's coverage for all the work assignments are very important for this RFP. And we also want to make sure there's participant feedback tools where you're gathering information about ways to improve the program, the work assignments, et cetera. We want to always be focused on improving our programs and services. And so we need feedback from the participants to make that happen. Next slide. DFSS will monitor and track a set of performance indicators that may include, but are not limited to, the number of participants enrolled in the program, weekly work crew attendance, number of hours worked each week, number and type of referrals made for supportive services, as well as the number and percentage of participants who successfully complete the Transitional Jobs Program. Next slide. We also want to monitor the percentage and number of participants who enter unsubsidized full-time employment, the number of participants who earn a base hourly wage equal to or above the Chicago's minimum wage. This is after they achieve employment after the program. And these are the outcomes that we want them to achieve. The percentage and number of participants who enroll in the industry-specific post-secondary or vocational training to learn new skills and advance in their careers. Success, we're measuring success not just by employment after the program, but also we want to include success. We want success to include those who want to transition into other training and opportunities where they can build their skill set and position themselves for higher wage opportunities. In our selection criteria, we, again, as I've mentioned earlier, we want to focus on the strength of the proposed program. And here we note whether the applicant has clearly defined the services to be provided, whether those services are appropriate to addressing the needs and the desired outcomes for the target population, in this case, returning residents. We want to make sure that you're using evidence-based practices, whether those are research that has been conducted on your program or whether you're implementing or integrating research that's national or local best practices on how to best serve and prepare residents for long-term job opportunities. We want to make sure that there's an effective approach in place to identifying and retaining program participants. As we've mentioned previously, we historically have not had enough participants enrolled to make sure that the operations don't necessarily, there are no gaps in operations. And so when there's not enough participants, that requires overtime, and we don't necessarily have the budget to cover overtime. So we want to make sure that there's enough participants to get the work done within a 35-hour work week. We also want to limit that work week to make sure that if there's any other supportive services or any other training that needs to happen for participants, they have time to do that. Again, the focus is on long-term employment opportunities, and we want to position our participants to be prepared for long-term employment opportunities. Next slide. Program performance, outcomes, and quality. This portion focuses on demonstrating evidence of a strong past or current performance against those desired outcomes, in this case, employment. We want to show that you have a history of getting people connected to long-term job opportunities. The applicant must have relevant systems and processes needed to track and report performance on program outcomes. So this means you have a system in place to demonstrate and show that you're tracking the metrics that we're looking for, and you're also capturing the information over the long term about how people are doing after the program. The applicant has the relevant systems and processes needed to collect and store key participant and performance data. Again, those data metrics, whether it's client demographics, and then those outcomes that are tracking the progress, those are both important. And we want to make sure that we want to see in your application that you have a system in place to address those needs, track those outcomes, and that strengthens the you in this area. So in program performance, if you address those bullets, you'll get better scores on the RFP review. Next slide. Organizational capacity. In this criteria, we want to make sure the applicant has qualified staff responsible for program oversight and management. You also have the staff in place to do the client-facing work. We want to see that you have expertise working with the target population, and you have the relevant capabilities and infrastructure needed to serve this group, specifically in the context of their transitional job experience. So this means supporting them. If you're noticing any behaviors that aren't conducive for their long-term goals and for long-term success, you have a system and a process in place to address that. The applicant demonstrates a commitment to participants being paid the city's minimum wage during the transitional job experience. We want to see that evidence in the proposal responses, and the organization reflects and engages the diverse people of the community it serves. So the staff, the leadership, the board, we're looking at all of those metrics to make sure, and this is in alignment with equity, we're looking at all these metrics to ensure that the people serving our target population, they demonstrate cultural competency, and we'd like this to be reflected throughout all levels of the organization. Reasonable cost, budget justification, and leverage of funds. In this criteria, we want to make sure the applicant has the fiscal capacity to implement the proposed program. The applicant conducts an annual audit. The applicant leverages other funds and in-kind contributions to support total program and administrative costs. And the applicant demonstrates reasonable implementation costs and funding requests relative to its financial and human resources. So we just want to see a justification for all the costs that you're proposing for the program. And we want to make sure that there's other resources being leveraged so that the program is able to be operating effectively. The administrative costs, we'll talk a little bit more about that later, about how you can demonstrate meeting the minimum requirements for this selection criteria. Again, we want to just make sure the costs are reasonable, justified, and that the organization has the capacity to perform the work in advance of reimbursement. We do not provide advances at this time, and so we expect the program to be ready to hit the ground running, and so that needs to be reflected in your responses to the questions. Budget or cost proposals. So the term of the contract executed under this RFP will be from January 1, 2022 through December 31st, 2023. These are 2-year contracts. The award range is $825 to $1 million per year. And that, again, that's a range, and that depends on a variety of factors, availability of funding, as well as the available funding for this program. If a respondent is requesting to cover indirect costs, the agency is required to include those costs in the base calculation of total direct costs: salaries, wages, fringes, professional and technical services, material and supplies, etc. And then less indirect costs multiplied by the indirect cost rate as approved by the city, department, and agency. City department in this case, meaning DFSS, and the agency, meaning if you have a pre-approved indirect cost rate, please note that in your response. And as we go deeper into the contract process, that becomes more important, making sure that letter is available and you're using that to show and demonstrate the justification of costs for the program. Be thoughtful and inclusive when developing your budget. Apply for your program's actual costs. Again, if you have any costs that you're leveraging in for the proposed program model, please include that. But we cannot give you more money than what you asked for. However, unfortunately, we can give you less than what you asked for. So please be thoughtful about that and make sure that you're asking for what the amount of the program will cost. Again, use the reasonable cost question on the application to discuss how you determine the cost reflected in the budget. Next slide. Some common mistakes that we see on the budgets are fringes. So please check your calculations. Supplies, these are frequently under or over budgeted for. Client assistance, if this is an appropriate and allowable cost, do not forget to include it. Make sure your job description titles and your job description uploads have the same title. Also put a brief description of the job in the budget document itself, if you have not discussed it specifically in your application. Put your budget in the appropriate columns, and finally, show your match. Next slide. Selection and transition timeline. So the pre-proposal webinar is today. You are here now. Thank you for joining us. The RFP was released last week, September 22nd, and the applications are due October 29th, 12 noon. Contract starts January 1, but the work begins in March 1st. Seasonal, and it goes through November 30th. And now I will transition over to Julia.
Mark, that was awesome. And yeah, just to underscore in the tips about the budget, we recently had an applicant that put together a great program and very carefully put all of their budgets into the match column. So when we went to review that budget, it looked like they had applied for a great program that they were going to find match money for. So really, we were all very, the applicant and all of us were very sad when they turned that particular budget in, because ultimately they were applying for no money from us, and it was really, really sad and bad. So just make sure, yeah, please review your budget documents. As we'll talk in a few slides later during the submission process, the e-procurement system that we use for our applications has an area where you need to put in lines. We don't look at the lines, but you need to put in placeholder numbers to get rid of an error message. So I'm going to just go through, this is my usual sort of song and dance about RFPs. If you've never done business with the city of Chicago, you're going to need to register into iSupplier e-procurement as soon as possible. The iSupplier, we use the terms iSupplier and e-procurement interchangeably, but technically the iSupplier system is the system in which you a vendor, potential vendor or actual vendor, sets up an account to access the e-procurement system, which is where all of our contract activities are managed. And it's sort of cradle to grave. Our RFPs are posted on e-procurement, and if you're awarded a contract, you will manage your contract, voucher for payments, etc., in the e-procurement platform using your iSupplier account. Kind of that's the key to that fabulous world. I like to tell people, remember them. You know, my tips are more global, less subject or program specific, but I like to give people some guidance in terms of how to do a great application for us. If you are looking at our application questions, you sort of have a question about the philosophy or the direction that we are going, please look at your RFP narrative. I know that we upload the RFP as an individual document. It's in, you can get at it in a million different ways. And I know that they're dense documents, but really the answers and the direction, our philosophy are all articulated in that narrative and scope document. Look at the application questions closely and remember that they align. Part of what we have spent a lot of time doing over the past few years is making sure that our scopes align with the selection criteria, which align with the application criteria, the application questions rather. And then all of that information, the application questions and the selection criteria specifically, are aligned to develop and are developed into our evaluation tools. So use the information in the RFP for guidance in formulating your answers if you have a question about sort of a more global, what are we looking for? What's the philosophy? What's important to us? To that end, I always do say, please carefully review the selection criteria. In terms of writing an actual response, there's a 4,000 character limit, which includes punctuation and spaces. Each of your responses allotted 4,000 characters. So it's not 4,000 characters to tell us all about everything. It's 4,000 characters per question. E-procurement was developed on an Oracle platform for those who wish to know that or care. And as a result, it works best in the Internet Explorer browser, which no one uses anymore. But if you are having issues in working with e-procurement for the past 4 years, I have to say that most of the bugs have been taken care of from the user end, and that if you're having problems about it timing out, you're getting kicked out all the time. It's being glitchy. It's probably something on your computer's end, and that sometimes opening e-procurement and working at it in Internet Explorer is going to get you the best, least frustrating experience. That being said, I have run it in Chrome, I've run it in Firefox, I've run it in Safari, no problem. So it should be, it works best on the Internet Explorer browser. That's what it was developed on, but it really works fine, perfectly fine in all of those others. I would only use the Internet Explorer if you're really having problems. Your machine and the e-procurement website just can't see eye to eye. One pro tip is don't use the back button on your browser. If you do, it will look like e-procurement keeps working, but it will stop saving everything. And when you go to save, you'll get an error message. And when you log back in, you will find that everything that you did after hitting that back browser button will not be there, which is really not how I wanted to spend any number of Wednesdays, right? So let's go to the next slide. I often like to say, start early, save often. So one of the things about working in e-procurement is that you can submit your application and later amend it up until the due date, October 29th. So if you're worried about I'm worried about getting something in, you can submit it and then amend it as many times as you want. And then at least you have something in the system, you have some sort of placeholder, because we do not accept late applications. We can't accept late applications. And the only way that we can accept late application is basically to re-release the entire RFP again, which we really, really don't like doing. I tell people to avoid the rush of possible mishaps by submitting early. You should plan on your submissions taking 30 to 60 minutes. I really tell people to think about applying the day before. Never going to have an RFP due on a Monday because I think that's mean. So you'll always have a day before, and I highly recommend that you try to tell yourself it's due the 28th, and then you can have a nice, less like frantic and stressful experience submitting, because as we'll see in later slides, there's usually you're going to get error messages, and it might take a minute for you to resolve those error messages, and being under the gun doesn't help you think better in a system that I find that most people seem to find to be relatively unintuitive. In terms of support, you can make use of the e-procurement hotline for help. They are at 312-744-HELP. You can call me and I will help you. In terms of answering your administrative questions, Mark is really the person to talk to about programmatic concerns. Just note that e-procurement hotline operates Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, as do I, although generally speaking, if you call me, if you can get a hold of me, I don't have a problem talking to you on a Saturday or after hours or whatever. I understand we all work different hours, especially in a continuing pandemic. I do try to be responsive and make sure that I get back to people within 24 hours, either via email or phone. The other thing to remember, and this is not as big a concern for this particular RFP, is that if you, and this is a reason why you want to submit early or try to, is because say that you're in the middle of the submission process and you have a question. If you're doing that at 11:30, like I'm at my desk, but I might be talking to somebody else. The people at the helpline, they're there, but you know what? They might not get back to you for a minute. And so if you only have 20 minutes or an hour to play with to resolve a problem of unknown proportions, you really want to give yourself time to actually get that help. I recently had an RFP closed and somebody missed the deadline because the person that they had put in charge of submission didn't go to the webinar. The people kind of just was like, hey, submit this for me. They ran the time. The person in charge of making the submission didn't know that she could call us, didn't know that she could call me or email me, hadn't reviewed any of the screens that I'm going to show you about how to do the submission, and hadn't been told that they even existed. And ultimately, the agency, the applicant, missed the deadline. They put in all sorts of work doing a deadline. We understand our applications are pretty heavy. We require a lot. Don't miss on a technicality like that. That's a terrible feeling. And I don't know if I can't think of anybody offhand that's been fired for that, but it just doesn't work well. So try to submit the day before, save yourself, the heartache or the potential heartache. So now we're going to go on. Let's see the next slide. I'm going to talk about how to accept an amendment. We generally post amendments to make changes, to articulate deeper information, but really what we mostly do for an amendment is to just post the questions, legally post the questions that we have in this that we get from this webinar and the answers so that they're available to everyone. Additionally, a link to the webinar will be posted on the DFSS website, so you can relive this glorious, hour to 90 minutes of your day or of your life if you want to. It's captured, it will be on YouTube, so we're all going to be internet stuff. So we post amendments because we want to post these answers to the questions. We also want to, if we have changes that we need to articulate, that's what it's going to be. So don't be surprised if you have to accept an amendment. If you have to accept the amendment in order to make the application once the amendment has been posted. And you will see from these slides, we are very interested in having you understand and attest and swear on staff Bibles to the idea that you are responsible for the information that is in the amendment itself. So in this particular slide, we're going to look with, you're trying to start an application. Under normal circumstances, you would just go to this actions bar, hit create, do the pull down menu to get to create quote, and then hit go. In this case, it's been amended, so you're going to have to go and accept the amendment before you're allowed to start that application. You can view the amendment history by clicking in blue. Generally speaking, anything in blue in the e-procurement world will take you to somewhere else, which is why you don't need to use the back browser button. So we're going to pretend, in this particular case, click to start accepting the amendment, click view amendment history, and that will take us to the next slide, or the next screen if you're doing this in real time. So to begin the acceptance and acknowledgement process, you're going to open the RFP in view only. You're going to click on document number 1 to review the amended changes to the RFP. You're going to click on this infinity, and or eyeglasses. I think it's eyeglasses. Somebody else thought it's, you figure out what maybe it's hypothetical. And after and that's going to open the document itself to let you know, so you can actually read the amendment. You'll notice here in this middle part, this amendment, it has an amendment description, which will basically tells you like, hey, these are the questions from the FAQ, or hey, we've decided we're going to make this due later, or hey, I'll use purple font. We don't say any of this. Well, we said I don't know if you can even do purple font, but you could nice it try. Anyway, after that, you're going to acknowledge the amendment by clicking on the button here that says acknowledge amendments. You can see it's on the top, upper or lower, side of the right hand side of the screen. Pick whichever button speaks to you and click it. That will take you to this next screen. And we skipped a screen. Can we go back? So when you get to this screen, you're going to click on the accept checkbox, which is tiny. It's such tiny boxes in e-procurement. And then you're going to click acknowledge. So you have clicked acknowledge, and then it will take you to confirmation that your acknowledge has been accepted, and you're going to hit yes because you are confirming your acknowledgement, and that will take you to the next screen, which, just in case you hadn't really become one with this amendment, you're going to click on the checkbox saying that you accept the terms and conditions. And so, yeah, again, the little checkbox way at the bottom there, tiny little box, you can barely see it. And then you're going to hit accept, right-hand side, either upper or lower. And then that is the final step. And you will have become a more well-rounded person. Well, probably the same, right? Next, we're going to talk about how to submit an application. And I'm going to show you 2 of the most common error messages people get and how to resolve them. And you will see the number of screens you have to go through for the submitting an application. It's not like sending an email. It's much more like, I wouldn't say doing your taxes, but somewhere in between. It's never that just send, whoosh, it's gone. It's more like send, whoosh, and then some bad thought appears on the screen, right? So how to submit an amendment. We're going to go to the next screen. You are ready. You're ready to submit your amendment. You start by saving your draft one last time because all good grant writers compulsively save all the time. And then you click continue. When you hit continue, you're going to be put into the, what's going to happen is when you click continue, the e-procurement system is going to do like a scan of your entire RFP and look for things that it considers to be errors. The most common error is, and then you'll get a list. So you might get a list of like 5, which is heart stopping and sort of like judgy. But anyway, you'll get these error messages, and it's going to say. So in this one, you're going to say it says you must quote on at least one line in the RFQ. So everybody gets this. This is what I kind of referred to at the beginning of this webinar, or at the beginning of when I started talking to you. And let's go to the close-up on the next slide. So you're going to quote on at least one line in the RFQ, and you'll see right under there, it's going to say lines. You're going to click on that tab. It's going to open up, and you're going to see the lines for the budget. I cannot stress enough, put in whatever number you want. We're going to look at your budget upload. We're not going to look at this to make a determination about your budget. So you can put in your real numbers, you can put in your fake numbers, don't really care. Just put a number, a placeholder of some sort in every line. It can't be a letter, but I wish it could be, because then you could say funny things. Now you could just say things in funny number secret codes, right? Let's go to the next. The next common error that we have in the submitting of an application is a quote value is required for the requirement first name. And so in this example, a quote value is the e-procurement speak for your answer, which is limited to 4,000 characters, punctuation, spaces included. The requirement is e-procurement speak for your application questions, and first name is the specific application, the name of the specific question that has gone undone. So in this case, a quote value is required for the requirement first name, means that you forgot to fill out that text box that wants you to put in your first name. At that point, you're just going to go in, you'll find first name, you put in your name, and you should be well on your way. So let's go to the next slide. So eventually, after you resolve all of these errors, you're going to keep clicking, continue, submit, continue. And when you are done with the errors and e-procurement has deemed that your application is error-free and ready to be submitted, you're going to be in this review and submit screen. At that point, you can actually do a review of your entire application. You can just, the next subsequent slides I'll show you, you just keep scrolling down, and then if you need to edit, you can go back and edit, you can change, you can look at your attachments, as you can see like in this screen. And you're like just doing like the final review. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, so here we go. This is what the top looks like. We'll go to the next slide, because at the bottom, it's like a one huge long page that you scroll through. And at the bottom, you will be asked to provide an electronic signature. So this is unintuitive and something that bothers me, but hey, what are you going to do? Put in your name and your title first, and then check the box. If you check the box, you get an error message, because you're not supposed to check the box before you put in your name and your title, even though the checkbox is before the name and the title, and it's not, I think. I don't think that that's logical. And this platform is so, like, all it is logical. So anyway, that's just my rant. So at this point, you can save the draft one more time. You can see this printable view on the lower right-hand side. That will give you a PDF of your entire application. Once you submit, you're not going to be able to actually see the application that you submitted in e-procurement. So I highly recommend that you do this printable view, or you at least have everything in some, a word processing or whatever you use to make, to keep your answers straight or something. But yeah, once you submit your application in e-procurement, it gets sucked away, and then you will never see it again. And it's kind of embarrassing to have to call us and be like, hey, can you send me my application back? So do the printable view. You'll see here also, I couldn't get it into one screen on the previous slide, but there's this little submit button. So you're going to click the submit button because you're in fact ready to submit, and that will take you to the next screen where you get a confirmation. So you're going to get this confirmation screen. That is how you know that you've submitted successfully. E-procurement's going to send a confirmation email that often ends up in people's junk and spam file, folders within 24 hours of your submission. But if you really just want confirmation, call me. I am literally sitting at my desk waiting for people to call. It is not a problem, or email me. It is absolutely not a problem for me to check up and make sure that your submission was received. The minute you hit submit is the minute I can see it, and I am more than happy to confirm. That's about all I have to say. It concludes what I have to say about the e-procurement system. We're now at the point in our presentation where we can take questions about anything RFP related. I guess you could ask Mark or Tom or I about the meaning of life, but really, why would you?
Yeah, we'll limit it to RFP questions.
Yes.
I see I see a few questions. Two from Edwin Galletti, I think we can respond to right away. So I'll go ahead and do that. First question is, will you allow for providers to get work bands for support? So I'm going to respond by saying that costs for work bands may be included in the budget. However, you need to make sure those costs are reasonable and they are directly aligned with the work that's being done. The next question, how many contracts will be awarded? One contract will be awarded within that range of $875,000 to $1,075,000. I see another question from Felicia Griffin, and her question is, can you tell me the number in each work crew? And that answer is 10 per work crew. There's 2 shifts per day. There's a morning shift and an afternoon shift. Those shifts are about 4 hours or less. So you can, it's feasible for those same crew members in the morning to work in the afternoon. That has been done and can be done. But we want to make sure that we have enough capacity for all the work or assignments that the Department of Streets and Sanitation provides. And so at minimum, 4 work crews, 10 each. All right, we have 2 more questions I will try to respond to. And if not, I will respond to them later. But let me pull these up. Oh, we have a lot coming. So I'll wait a moment.
Contracts will be awarded again?
Hey.
Yeah, here's what percentage match is required and may it be in kind? Yes, in kind matches. We anticipate that your matches will be in kind.
Yes.
The slide, I'm looking for the slide that says what is the percentage. It's not something. It's not something I have memorized. They're always a little different for each RFP.
We did not include a minimum match requirement, but we will prioritize applications that can demonstrate a match.
We do love a match.
Yes.
There's always more. It's more than.
So do we have a facility? Do we need to have a facility already, or can we allot for the rental of a facility? So I'll need clarification on that. So for the work crews are given assignments by the Department of Streets and Sanitation. And so we use that, and those assignments are throughout the city. So transportation is needed. So if you're talking about transportation to the sites, those costs can be included in the budget. I cannot easily see these questions. I'm downloading them and looking at them. So if there's, is that all of them?
Yeah, we talked, will you allow for providers to get work bands for transport? We answered. We know that there is no particular match requirement, but we do look for it and appreciate it. How many contracts will be awarded as per the RFP? 1. How many agencies will be picked is contract was awarded at Q1. The question about the rental that you were going to get back to, and then the number in each look through, which was 10, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Seems to be all of the questions that we have. Are there any other questions? This is where I always kind of have like that Forrest Bueller, Ferris Bueller's Day Off scene with the guy when they were in like history class. And, you know, we can't hear anybody, so it's always just like waiting for questions in the void. So here, you know, if you have additional questions after this webinar, program questions, reach out to Mark. Non-programmatic questions, reach out to me. Use the e-procurement hotline. They have a higher level of access into e-procurement than I do. I'm good at basic stuff, and but if you're really having a problem, you're gonna end up with them, and they are lovely and helpful and answer their phones just as well as I do. If you have questions about the budget, sometimes people feel that that's an administrative function, but it's really not. That's something that you should be discussing with your program person. Is there anything that you would like to add, Mark?
No, I think we've covered it, or I hope we've covered everything. And again, if not, please reach out with any questions that you have, and we will respond.
All so much for attending. We look forward to looking and reading your applications. Call if you have questions, and best of luck.
Yes, thank you.